If an earthquake happened, what would you do? Would you try to help people? Or would everyone need to fend for themselves? That's the big question that Disaster Report 4 Summer Memories asks. The game has had a bit of a tough life in terms of its development. The fourth game in the Disaster Report series and the third for the West, the game was originally scheduled to come out for the PlayStation 3. However, development was halted in 2011 due to the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, which seems a little ironic given that this game is about surviving in a post-earthquake world. The disaster also dashed the hopes the game would come out, as then developers Irem decided to cancel all their upcoming games and refocused on slot and pachinko machines. Some of the developers from Irem, including series producer Kazumo Kujo, joined together and formed a new company, Granzella. In 2014, Granzella was able to successfully purchase the IP rights and distribution for the Disaster Report series, including its future from Irem, and the game once again rose from the ashes as a new game from scratch with an announcement in 2015. Of course, by then, the PlayStation 4 was in full swing, so production shifted to the PlayStation 4 and eventually the Nintendo Switch and PC, and Granzella decided to introduce VR functions into the PS4 version of the game. The game ultimately got released in Japan in 2018, and Nippon Ichi Software America announced in 2019 their plans to publish the game outside of Japan. Granzella also worked with the Kobe Fire Department in order to teach people what they should do in the event of a disaster. For transparency, a code for this game was provided to me courtesy of the publisher. In Disaster Report 4 Summer Memories, you can play as a male or female character, each with basic customizable features, as well as a default name which you can change. The story has your character on a bus heading to Surfin Park, with your choice determining why you're going that way. You receive an alert on your phone about a large earthquake that had hit the area, and, choice depending, you brace for the shock to hit you. You reawaken in the overturned bus at Surfin Park, and as you go around the city surveying the damages and trying to find your way home, you'll come across people needing help, and it's up to you on how to approach them in order to help them. The game features over 60 characters, and as you explore the city, you'll see just how the earthquake can bring out the good in people, as well as the worst in people. But is this game any good? Find out in The Good. The exploration feature of the game was something I enjoyed, and just how unpredictable some of the aftershocks in the game were. Sure, the tremors are scripted, but playing through the game for the first time, you're given a sense of not knowing where things will land or what will give way beneath you, which makes things more worrisome. I also had a bit of a laugh at some of the choices that you get when talking with people. You can get some fairly normal choices, such as helping people out, to choices that make you a bit of an arse like demanding a reward, to even outright stupid and unreasonable ones like asking someone to change the title of the game for some water. I found for the most part the game was quite grounded in reality, if you excuse the pun, and really shows the impact that a disaster can have on people's day-to-day lives as they try to go back to normality and rebuild, or a shift in personality from the stresses of being in a natural disaster. Sometimes your characters in a monologue can shift how the story plays out, which I also enjoyed. Like the choices, the game even breaks the fourth wall and pokes fun at itself by hoping that it's okay. The characters I encountered in the game were relatable, and it was nice bonding with some of them while trying to help them out, and the game's DLC, which is set months later, finally gives some closure on the fates of some of them, as I felt the game sort of abruptly ends their story so you can progress. Overall, the story, as crazy as the ride gets, it was still really fun. I also liked the game's collectibles on top of its gameplay. A staple of the Disaster Report games is on the different clothing, accessories and compasses that you can collect, and Disaster Report 4 does not disappoint. Over the course of the game, you'll amass a bunch of clothing items that you can change into. These can make situations more absurd and for the most part are cosmetic, though some characters will comment on certain outfits. These outfits do take up space in your backpack, so if you don't need them you can discard or sell them. Compasses on the other hand are kept in their own space and can be switched out at any time. Bags when collected generally offer you more storage space, which is handy as you start collecting food and drink items too. As you're playing, you'll need to monitor your hunger, thirst and need to use the toilet. If one of them gets too low, your stress meter will start rising and as a result will lower your health until you rest. Thankfully, it takes a while before this happens, and the game does provide you with indicators when one starts getting low. That's all I've got here for the good, so let's look at what wasn't so good in the bad. As funny as some of the choices are, I tried to be a paragon of good in the first playthrough, and I found that sometimes you have to do something which you think is wrong in order to progress the story. The game introduces a morality system where some of your actions are judged by awarding you with moral points and immoral points, and some places I found you won't be punished with immoral points if you can justify what you're doing. A good example is further into the game where you get involved with a cult. At some stages you can open the safe in the leader's room to find 30 million yen as well as a ring. The game will punish you with the moral points if you decide to steal the money and ring, but will not if you can justify it by stating that you're honestly borrowing it. Joining the cult I found was the only way to progress the game, so it felt to me that the choices I made around it didn't really matter in the end, nor could I avoid it knowing what can happen in some of these cults. I also felt that some scenes where you need to do things quickly didn't really present me with much of a sense of urgency. I could still leisurely wander around and check a couple of things before actually completing what I needed to do. The VR section of the game is a little lackluster to me. I was sort of half hoping to wander around and talk to people like in the game, but the VR sections just have you exploring areas that you've visited already in the game and experiencing the earthquake in VR while trying to collect stickers that you can exchange for in-game items. I'll admit that watching buildings and things topple around me is pretty neat, but there isn't a great deal of things to do in the VR mode than to wander around and look at things where there's no one around. Thankfully, the items that you can exchange your points for are not required to beat the game or will make it easier, so it's entirely optional, and if you don't have VR you're not really missing out on much. Other than that, there isn't much else for me to talk about here, so let's finish it up with the opinion. Disaster Report 4 Summer Memories was a treat to play. It's not a perfect game, and having played the other games in the series, yes that includes 3 given my limited knowledge of Japanese, I was somewhat expecting something a little more camp and over the top in terms of plot with trademark Japanese silliness. And I wasn't disappointed. This game is no exception, though it does make a little bit more sense, sort of. I like the exploration, gameplay and choices as well as the collectibles, though I feel that in order to progress the story, players should have multiple ways of progressing instead of having to do questionable things like joining a cult. The game does do a good job of showing the best and the worst of people in a disaster, and I felt like I cared about the characters while playing it. If you want to look at something a little bit different, then this is a game worth dabbling in, and who knows, you might learn a thing or two of what to do in an event of an earthquake, like asking a guy to change the title of the game for some water. So with that, it's time for my rating. I would give Disaster Report 4 Summer Memories this clearly not shady leader of a religious cult out of 10. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, feel free to check out some of our other videos and subscribe for more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram and our Facebook page. Once again, thank you for watching.